I stayed home alone and uncovered 3 disturbing true stories that will haunt your nights. I never should have opened that door. The sun had just faded, leaving my home wrapped in thick shadows. I was nestled in my favorite chair, flipping through an old photo album, when the feeling hit me. Cold. Unnerving. Like eyes boring into my back. I brushed it off, chalking it up to the darkness creeping in. My cozy sanctuary suddenly felt like a stranger. It started with a whisper. Just a faint sound, like rustling leaves. I paused. The hairs on my arms stood on end. I turned to the window. Outside, the trees swayed, but something felt off. I got up, uneasy, and made my way to the kitchen. That was my first mistake. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, a signal of my growing anxiety. I noticed the kitchen table. It was somehow too tidy. The knives gleaming. I had left them scattered, but now they were aligned like soldiers ready for battle. My heart raced. Had I done that? My mind spiraled. I stepped closer, trying to dismiss the chills racing down my spine. Then, a loud thud echoed from upstairs. No one was there. I took a deep breath, stifling the lump in my throat. Focus. But the house had turned against me. There was no comfort in my 4 walls. I advanced cautiously, every creak amplifying my dread. As I reached the foot of the stairs, I felt a draft brush past me, icy, unnatural. I pulled my sweater tighter. Darkness loomed above, swallowing the steps. With each creak, I imagined shadows twisting, lurking just out of sight. I could taste the fear, thick like smoke. I searched for a rational explanation, even as panic clawed at me. My phone buzzed a text from a friend, but I couldn't focus. My thoughts spilled. What if someone broke in? Or worse, what if something was already inside? The idea gripped me, sending a chill trembling through my bones. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step seeming heavier, as if the very air had thickened. A soft giggle echoed. I froze. The sound echoed again, too close. My heart pounded. I was bad at hiding, worse at ignoring what my gut was screaming. I should have run, but curiosity rooted me to the floor. I reached the landing, straining to hear. The laughter faded, replaced by a soft whispering indistinct, just on the edge of understanding. I stepped forward, instinctively looking around. The darkness felt alive, wrapping around me like a shroud. My skin prickled with tension, alert to every slight shift. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the hallway. I gripped the railing tight, ice washing over my extremities. What I saw, or thought I saw, rushed my breathing into chaos. My throat constricted, screams dancing on the edge of my lips. I suddenly felt a weight behind me, impossibly cold. Just as I turned, a door slammed shut. The sound ripped through the silence, slicing the air like a knife. I stumbled back, my heart pounding louder than the echoes around me. Was it over? Or was it just beginning? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence that followed the slammed door was suffocating. Time felt distorted, stretching in the wake of adrenaline. I stood frozen, grappling with the weight of my own breaths, wondering if I had conjured this madness or if something else roamed through my house. The pulse of my heart thudded in my ears, competing with the relentless whispers that seemed to curl around me like smoke. That I turned back toward the stairs, desperate for escape, but the landing felt alien, the walls closing in. The whispering resumed, soft and mocking, flowing through the air like the movement of unseen fingers skimming along my skin. My feet moved on their own, carrying me towards the bedroom down the hall, drawn by some unfathomable urge. As I stepped past the threshold, the air thickened further, charged with an energy that tasted iron on my tongue. The room was murky, draped in shadow, but a flicker of light caught my eye from the corner, a dusty old music box I had inherited from my grandmother. I hadn't opened it in years. Yet, there it was, sitting ominously on the dresser, the lid slightly ajar. Against my better judgment, I approached. Hesitation scraped along my nerves as I reached out a trembling hand. Moonlight streamed through the window, casting a spotlight on the box and illuminating the delicate carvings of roses alongside strange symbols I didn't recognize. The whispers grew louder, urging me closer, crawling beneath my skin as panic knotted tighter in my stomach. Taking a deep breath, I opened the lid. The music box erupted to life, a haunting, discordant melody filling the space, echoing against the walls like a ghostly serenade. I felt a chill shift behind me, and the temperature in the room plunged, my breath visible in the sudden chill. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, darting in and out of existence. I was not alone. Then, without warning, the music stopped. The silence returned, swallowing the last notes and leaving a heavy vacancy that throbbed in my ears. I hesitated, heart in my throat, and then, faintly, I heard a voice rise above the dark, a soft, childlike whisper weaving through the silence. "Help me!" The sound sent a bolt of terror through me, gripping my ribs so forcefully I stumbled back. I scanned the room, eyes wide and searching, but found nothing. The chills settled deeper in my bones as I caught my reflection in the mirror. The girl staring back at me wore a look of sheer terror, but just as quickly, a dark shadow swirled behind her, an outline almost human, hazy yet tangible. My breath hitched and I could barely process what I saw. It felt more like a nightmare than reality. "Help me!" The voice pleaded again, more insistent now, laced with an urgent desperation that sent waves of dread cascading over me. "I'm trapped." Fueled by both terror and an inexplicable pull, I demanded, "What do you want? Who are you?" The shadows shifted, forming an obscured image. It was a girl, or at least the outline of one, hair tangled, face shadowed. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope dare to pierce through my horror. Perhaps she was truly lost, trapped in this limbo, and if I could just understand, I might help her. But before I could extend a hand, the door to the bedroom creaked slowly open, drawing my gaze away. It opened not just with a push, but as if something had grasped the handle and turned it with intent. Ice gripped my heart as I realized I hadn't moved. The shadow shifted closer to me, the silhouette of the girl contorting in pain, as though she could feel the growing chaos and anger spilling into the room from whatever emerged. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut on its own, the force vibrating through the walls. The girl's mouth opened wide, a silent scream that twisted the silence into something far more horrific that I had to escape. Just as I spun to the window, desperation fueling my limbs, something cold brushed against my neck. I felt a breath, not my own. The shadows coalesced, and a voice whispered close enough that it felt like fingernails scraping my sanity. "Stay with me." As I whirled around, the air crackled with energy, and the room began to spin. I stumbled, crashing into the dresser, my heart racing uncontrollably. I had to find a way out before it consumed me whole. The girl's shadow raised an arm, a silent plea. But it was then, in that moment of vulnerability, that the door burst open, revealing not freedom, but a figure cloaked in darkness, an ancient malevolence that sent black tendrils through the air, swallowing every light in the room. The last thing I heard before everything descended into chaos was the echoing laughter of an unseen crowd, hungry and malevolent, drowning out my screams as I was dragged back into the shadows. Then, there was silence, thick, bitter, and impenetrable. That I was not merely in a haunted house. I had become part of a much darker game, one that had waited patiently for me to uncover its terrible secrets. What would become of me now? The darkness held me captive, wrapping around my limbs like a tightening shroud as I flailed helplessly against the grasp of whatever malevolence resided within the walls of my home. The laughter echoed, a twisted symphony of mirth, rising above my terror. I could taste the bitterness of fear on the back of my throat, each breath strained as I fought against the invisible force that sought to consume me. In an instant, the shadows shifted again, pulling me deeper into the abyss. I felt the weight of countless eyes upon me, unseen yet intensely aware. They watched and waited, their anticipation palpable. I could sense their hunger for despair flaring like a ravenous flame. Just then, the suffocating darkness broke, revealing fleeting glimpses of the room as pieces of furniture materialized in and out of existence, each shifting like a puppet under the control of an unseen hand. That I gasped for breath, clutching at the dresser, the sharp edges biting into my palms as I sought purchase in a deteriorating reality. But then I noticed something, a flicker of light. To my right, behind a curtain that swung eerily in the weaponizing wind, a lantern glowed faintly. It beckoned me like a candle against the overwhelming night, and my heartbeat quickened with the hope of escape. That I let go of the dresser, the shadows attempting to tug me back into their chilling embrace. I stumbled towards the light, my pulse hammering louder than the distressed whispers that wanted to drown me. The closer I got, the more intensely the light pulsed, as if it was alive, as if it was aware of my presence. As I reached for the curtain, a shriek erupted from behind me, a screech that stole all remnants of courage from my heart. I turned back, paralyzed, and in that moment, the shadow emerged fully. It stood tall and distorted, elongating limbs stretched impossibly that grasped towards me, the contours of its features revealing nothing but an empty void. In that inky face, I believed I could see the shreds of countless souls, and I was one of them, a new addition to the chorus of the damned. The lantern flickered intensely as the shadow surged forward, but just before it could seize me, the glimmering light erupted around me like a protective bubble. The shadow recoiled, snapping at the edge of the light, fury radiating from its form. It screamed, and the walls of my house shuddered with its rage. I could feel the energy in the room shift, the whispers transforming into guttural growls that clawed at my sanity. Desperate, I lunged towards the lantern, pushing the curtain aside. The light enveloped me, but only for a fleeting moment, a mere chicken scratch against the infinite night. Inside the circle of illumination, I caught the reflection of the girl's shadow. She was right behind me, twisting like a mirage. I opened my mouth to call out, to beg her to join me, but dread rooted me in place, sealing my voice. Suddenly, the room shook as if a storm were brewing, the atmosphere charged with anger and grief. The shadow screeched again, this time a sound so piercing I felt it vibrate within my bones. The light dimmed, threatened by the onslaught, and I felt that my bond to that darkness was stronger than I'd ever anticipated, as though I had been beckoned here for reasons beyond my understanding. In that moment of vulnerability, I glimpsed the truth. "Help me." The girl's voice echoed through the space again, not as a plea, but a command, this time empowerment lacing her tone. "Find the entrance. Draw it out." My heart raced at the realization that she needed me, that we were both ensnared in a web of despair woven by the entity feeding off our collective fears. Resolute now, I steeled myself. I had to fight, to free myself from this unholy alliance. I took a breath that felt like a gasp against the encroaching shadows. I could feel the surge of the entity approaching, and as I turned to face it, the dark mouth of hallway behind me split open, sucking me into an unfathomable void. I stumbled back, but not without making one last desperate plea to the girl in the shadows. "I will help you. But you must guide me." And then, with a smirk that turned the edges of her shadow sinister, she disappeared, plunging me into utter darkness once more. The air thick with foreboding as the tendrils of shadow reached hungrily for the remnants of my resolve. The laughter erupted again, now a cacophony of distorted voices, mocking and taunting. "You think you can save her? You are ours." But just as despair washed over me anew, the lantern burst with brightness, the energy pulsating as it wove itself into an intricate web of light that shimmered around me like liquid, battling the encroaching darkness. And then I realized within the light was a riddle, a map of unseen pathways that would lead me toward the heart of this haunting, toward whatever horrible truths lay dormant under my home. Just as I grasped the gravity of my discovery, a hand shot from the void, its skeletal fingers brushing against my ankle, pulling me downwards, into the blackness, and the final shudder of that terrible laughter swept through the house as I felt myself being ripped apart from my last breath of daylight. The darkness was alive. Twisting and writhing, it pulled at the edges of my sanity with an insatiable hunger. As the skeletal fingers dragged me downward, I fought with every ounce of strength left in me, scrambling for something, anything, to anchor me. But there was nothing but cold void and abyss that welcomed me with chilling arms, its whispers echoing promises of dread that I was free falling into a silence so profound it felt like submission. The candlelight of the lantern flickered far above me, a pinprick of hope hovering just beyond reach as shadows engulfed me further. Panic surged, my heart thundered in protest, thrumming against my ribs like a trapped creature desperate to escape its predator. I clawed at the air, grasping at memories, prayers, anything that could pull me back from this torturous brink, and then I heard her again, the girl's voice, layered now with an urgency that sliced through the thick air. "Find the door. It's this way." The mocking laughter crescendoed around us, but her tone cut through the madness, guiding me with magnetic force. I turned, twisting in the weightless void, following the direction I thought I had felt her presence slip away. "Where are you?" I shouted, knowing the futility of my pleas within the consuming shadows. "Listen." And then, for a heartbeat, the cacophony ceased. A palpable stillness settled around me, the absence of chaos, a jarring emptiness. Bursts of soft whispers filled the void, a chorus of voices, both familiar and alien. They beckoned, luring me deeper into the abyss. "Freedom, sweet freedom, come forth." Still clinging, I concentrated on the girl's voice, unfamiliar and yet achingly close. Unfurled like a tapestry, the dark space distorted itself, revealing glimpses of doors, some wooden, some wrought in iron, each pulsating with an aura of dread and the promise of salvation. I felt her presence growing stronger, but I was still adrift, directionless in a realm devoid of form. My breaths quickened as horror settled over me. The eyes were back, watching from every corner, inching closer, thirsting for my fear. Suddenly, I heard metal groan, the creak of a door swinging open silently in the dark. It stood before me, an imposing iron frame, its surface etched with markings I couldn't comprehend. Yet something unearthed an instinct within, tugging at me, leading me toward the opaque threshold. As I approached, I felt the heat radiating from it, a raw pulse of energy mixed with an ancient malice that seeped into my skin. The door shimmered, alive with a force I both craved and feared. With a sudden resolve, I reached for the handle, cold metal bit into my palm as I prepared to pull. But the moment I turned, I was met with a chilling sight. The girl had returned, but not alone. Behind her, a serpent of shadows writhed, a manifestation of my deepest fears. It slithered closer, coiling dangerously, its dark mouth stretched wide in a grin that mocked my waning strength. "You think you can escape? That door, it leads to your despair." "No." I screamed, fueled by an adrenaline rush. "I am not afraid of you." The moment I yanked the door open, a blinding light spilled forth, illuminating the swirling shadows. The specter hissed a shrill sound that felt like ice being poured into my veins. It surged, lunging toward me, but I was already stepping through the threshold, leaving behind the oppressive pall of darkness that threatened to consume my mind. But as I crossed the threshold, I was hit by a wave of vertigo. The blinding light wavered and twisted, showing me brief flashes of a world steeped in charred remnants of past horrors. Terrible hearing filled my ears, screams echoing from a dark pit, the cries of children merging with the keening of the damned. The boy stood motionless in the chaos, his face obscured beneath layers of shadow, devoid of expression. "Please." The girl's voice echoed through the void I had entered. "This way." Desperate, I hesitated, watching as she pointed towards the far end of the twisted hall. The shadow surged once more, its ghastly laughter crackling like thunder in the background. I turned to run, but the ground trembled violently beneath me, splitting as fissures opened like baying mouths. From the depths, I felt the cold grip of despair pulling me backwards, while the girl's frantic cries echoed. She reached for me, her shadow flickering between dimensions, vast and fearful. "Don't give in. Find the truth. We're running out of time." That final warning sent a surge of urgency through me. Without thinking, I dashed towards the pale glimmer of promise, the weight of despair wrapped around me like chains. But as I rounded the last corner, I hesitated. What lay ahead shimmered ominously, and I swore I could hear the welcoming call of my name, sweet like promises of freedom, terrible like the lure of death. And then suddenly, time stopped as I caught a glimpse of something horrifying, reflections of my past lives flickering past in window-like portals. The faces morphed into the tormented guise of the lost children, their eyes blackened and pleading. Panic seized me, but as I turned to flee, I found my path sealed. The shadow surged in front of me, its form blocking every escape. "No! You belong here!" It shrieked, and the last thread of light began to dim, swallowing my last hope. With the taste of impending doom heavy on my tongue, I gave in to fear. As the darkness descended upon me once more, the doors slammed shut with a devastating finality, sealing my fate within the very shadows that sought my soul. And then, just as my vision began to fade, the laughter shifted, blurred into a solitary voice, a whisper that chilled me to the bone. "You've only just begun to understand," and the shadows rushed forward, engulfing me entirely. I awoke in an unrecognizable place, sprawled on the cold, hard ground. The air was thick with the scent of sulfur and something decayed that turned my stomach. My eyes blinked against the dim light as I pushed myself up, trembling. Straining to stand, I leaned against a wall that felt alive with restless energy, pulsing like the surface of water disturbed. A maze of broken tiles formed a confusing path, leading deep into a labyrinth of shadows. "Where am I?" I rasped, my voice hoarse and barely more than a whisper. Echoes of my question bounced back to me, mocking my confusion. To my right, an archway loomed, draped in darkness that seemed to breathe, like a hungry mouth waiting to swallow me whole. I instinctively recoiled, the chill of dread tightening around my chest. Yet, just beyond, the girl's voice drifted back to me, soft like the flutter of wings. "This way." Without a choice, I followed her voice, stepping cautiously into the archway. The dark engulfed me, a blindfold of terror that gripped my heart. Shadows danced along the walls, shifting in shapes that threatened to break forth and consume me. Each step resonated with the pulse of anxiety, a metronome ticking down the seconds of my sanity. As I cowered deeper into the dark, a jarring sound pulsed through the air. A distant bell tolled, the sound grinding against the very fibers of my mind, resonating with an unnatural intensity. It sent a ripple of my fears alive, conjuring visions of haunted spaces, the bedroom I used to dream in, dimly lit corners abuzz with buzzing whispers, each one like a disconnected thread leading to a greater horror left unrealized. The girl's voice sharpened, a knife cutting through the swelling panic. "You're close. You have to hurry." My heart raced, the frantic pounding urging my legs to move faster as I turned a corner. But then, the thing that lurked in the shadows revealed itself. Once just a whisper, now a tangible presence, it materialized from the chaos, a gnarl of shadows and elongated limbs that bent at unnatural angles. Its face was void of features but for two burning, crimson eyes that pierced me to my core. "What do you want?" I whimpered, frozen in a fear that seemed to paralyze my body. "It's not what I want," it hissed, its voice a rasp like leaves crumbling beneath an oppressive weight. "It's what you want. Do you want to see them?" "See who?" I croaked, terrified but curious, feeling an invisible thread pulling me toward this thing that wrapped itself in darkness. The specter twisted, gesturing with long, spindly fingers. "Your family, your memories, your regrets. All here. You just have to give in. Become one with the shadows, and you can find them. All of them." Images began to flicker before me, memories I had buried long ago surfaced, both haunting and sweet. My mother's face shone clear, her laughter ringing out in a warm embrace, my father's eyes full of love, and my sister running through a meadow, her peals of joy echoing like breaking glass through my heart. "Join us!" the entity chanted, and shadows exchanged glances, their laughter a storm of malice and longing, twisting every emotion into a disturbing echo of desire. That I felt warmth, a place of belonging, of purity against my crumbling sanity and the relentless grip of isolation. But then a name echoed through, my sister's name, scratching violently at the back of my consciousness. "Alina!" I gasped, remembering the day the darkness had taken her. The events came rushing back, painting my heart with a deep crimson sorrow, intensifying the claustrophobic sensations of the memories. No. You're lying. The presence snarled, the ground trembling beneath me, as the shadows rose high, twisting into a spiraling vortex of swirling madness. Lies? Or truths you've kept hidden? You seek to escape, but only despair will find you. The realization shattered me. I was losing the battle, teetering on a precipice between despair and will. But in that moment, something ignited inside. A refusal, a flicker of rebellion against the encroaching shadows. I won't give in. I screamed. With renewed vigor, I spun to run back, but the archway had vanished, a cruel illusion of hope cocooning me in dread. The shadows swirled faster, tightening their grip, dragging me closer to the entity that now bore the semblance of a ghastly grin. Turn back, sweet child. Embrace what you fear. Embrace me, it beckoned, arms extending in grotesque angles, reaching out through the shrouded darkness, and then I felt it a sudden tug from beyond the shadows, a connection to another realm, the ghostly whispers calling to my heart. The girl's voice turned desperate, a thread woven with dread. You must resist. You have to find the door. Behind you. But before I could expend the will to fight, I was whipped around, engulfed by a dark tide, eyes wide in terror as everything around me faded, swirling into a vortex of whispers and screams. Just as I felt the final pull, a blinding light pierced through the shadows, exposing the truth that lay hidden beneath somewhere, beyond the treacherous depths, pulsed the heart of my horror, waiting for me to make the choice. Choose. And in that moment of clarity, the ground beneath me began to crack, splintering like glass across an infinite chasm, and I realized the shadows were not just my fear, they were alive, hungry for my despair. Choose quickly. The girl screamed one last time, her lament echoing in the thickening air. But before I could step forward, the laughter returned, booming from all directions, an unsettling mix of the familiar and the eerie, crescendoing into a terrifying symphony that blurred reality and darkness into an unbearable end. The very ground buckled, and as I fell within the swirling maelstrom, I could feel my heart stop. The terror nosedived, and all went dark again as I heard that chilling whisper, "This was never about finding you, it's about what you've lost." And then, abruptly, everything shattered into silence. It took a moment for the silence to register, the absence of noise creating a vacuum that pressed upon my ears like something heavy and wet. I felt suspended in a limbo, like a marionette severed from its strings, drifting in an endless space devoid of the familiar contours of fear that had engulfed me moments ago. Slowly, I became aware of my surroundings, the thick darkness still holding me in its murky grasp, taunting me with the absence of form and sound. Hello. My voice sliced through the stillness, raw and quaking. No echo, no mocking reply, just the sheer heaviness of the air pressing on around me. I found myself alone, utterly isolated, with only the remnants of dread clinging to my skin. Panic surged in my chest. I wrestled with the memory of the dark entity, its voice like grinding stones, and the way it had twisted every thread of despair in my heart against me. What had it meant by all that? What was missing? As I forced myself to move, a distant glimmer caught my eye. Turning toward it, I staggered forward, the ground beneath my feet shifting unsteadily, transforming from cold stillness to a rolling flux of sensations. The faintest shimmer pulsed like a heartbeat, disappearing and reappearing as if to tempt me forward, to taunt me with the promise of escape. When I reached the glow, the eerie light engulfed me, revealing a narrow corridor flanked by jagged walls of raw stone that pulsed like breathing flesh. Even in the dimness, it was clear that the path was strewn with something akin to old bones, each crack crumbling underfoot, whispering tantalizing secrets of what had been. Part of me wanted to turn back and flee into the void, but the glimmer beckoned, illuminating a vision of a door at the far end, ancient and festooned with strange symbols that glowed softly, invitingly. It looked like it could either be salvation or another trap, a gateway of horror just like the dark archway I had fled from before. "Alina?" I called, hoping against reason she would answer. Each syllable hung in the air, a prayer unfulfilled, swallowed by the echoing emptiness. Nothing stirred. As I took a step toward the door, a low whisper slithered along the ground, curling up from the shadows. The voice was distant, indecipherable, swirling with an ancient malice. It sounded almost like laughter, dark and sinister. I froze, instinctively looking around, the ominous energy feeding the growing ache in my chest. Not for you, it seemed to say, though I could not discern who or what was speaking. Suddenly, I felt a rush of cold air behind me, icy and cutting. It bore the unmistakable stench of decay, and I turned quickly to find a figure emerging from the shadows. It loomed tall and skeletal, its eyes devoid of light, only two sunken hollows that absorbed surrounding darkness. It didn't have a face, just an outline that conformed to the shape of my deepest fears, a silhouette that radiated dread. Your sister, she is close. But time is not on your side, it hissed, its voice grating against my senses like nails on glass. She is lost within the labyrinth, and you are running out of time. With that, it extended a long, bony finger toward the glowing door, its energy pulsing wickedly. Open it, and you may find her. Or you may seal your fate. Against every impulse screaming at me to flee from the condemned being, I approached the door, heart hammering in my chest like a colossal war drum. It felt alive under my fingertips, vibrating with a restless energy, a powerful force that begged to be unleashed. What's behind it? I whispered, voice trembling in uncertainty. The shadow chuckled, a sound like rustling grave cloth. Beyond lies the truth of who you are and what you fear. To walk through is to confront the darkest corners of your soul. In that moment, I froze, time folded in on itself. Would I be able to face the truth? My fingers hovered above the symbols carved into the door, hesitation clashing with the urgency to find Alina. A sound reverberated through the corridor, loud and reverberating the toll of a bell, perhaps the same that had stirred my deepest fears earlier. Open it. The voice of the girl rang out, coating me in a fresh layer of hope. You need to trust yourself. They need you. In that instant, I made my choice and pushed the door open with a force fueled by desperation, the air around me vibrating violently as if the door itself was protesting this theft of its secret. A blinding light erupted from within, illuminating the corridor in a wild eruption of colors. As I stepped into the light, I felt the pull of something vast weightless around me, a sensation like falling through water that sent a shiver down my spine. The moment I crossed the threshold, reality seemed to splinter again, and icy darkness seeped into every crevice of my heart. Then the world vanished completely in a rupture of light and a violent roar of sound, and just as abruptly, it was as if the fabric of reality had tethered once more, leaving me gasping in another dismal chamber, one that almost felt familiar yet grotesquely warped. The walls pulsed ominously, and I saw reflections not of myself, but shadowy forms that morphed into nightmare visages and faded as quickly as they arose. The suffocating realization washed over me, the reflections were not mine, but faces I recognized, people I had loved but lost. Then I heard it again, the ghastly laughter enveloping my very being, echoing off walls that throbbed as if they held the anguish of countless souls. Welcome, it cooed with mocking glee. You've entered the echo chamber. Here, you will find not just what you seek, but truths that may swallow you whole. And, from the depths of the shadows, the laughter took form, coalescing into something that made my blood run cold, a figure cloaked in shadows, with eyes that glimmered like the remnants of dying stars. Your choice has consequences, it whispered, its voice sending tremors through the darkness around it. Now, you must pay the price. Before I could summon the strength to scream, I was thrust into the unforgiving embrace of my own treachery, the shadows writhing around me, pulling me in every direction as the echoes grew louder, more intense, a cacophony of despair threatening to consume me whole. And just as quickly as it began, I was unmoored, released into a silence darker and deeper than before, and heard a voice soft and twisted whispering a name that sent a slither of terror down my spine. Alina, help me find you. But the darkness chuckled back at me, a chilling sound that reverberated through my bones. You will never find what you seek. The chamber grew dimmer, shadows twisting around me like serpents eager to swallow their prey. Heart pounding, I fought against the suffocating darkness to remain anchored in the fragile tendrils of hope I had left. Alina! I screamed, my voice shattering against the cold stone, echoing into the void. Suddenly, the air shifted, revealing a more defined outline amidst the shadows. A figure I could barely make out its shape, but it was distinctly feminine, a silhouette that seemed to flicker between existence and non-existence. Alina! My throat tightened. The figure turned towards me, and for a split second, it was as if I glimpsed her eyes, wide and terrified within that endless dark. But the vision faded like smoke, dissipating into the oppressive silence that had become my closest companion. I stumbled forward, desperate to catch hold of her essence, but the shadows conspired against me, pulling me back with unseen hands, grasping and clawing. Alina! I shouted again, choking on the growing despair. But the darkness enveloped her name, twisting it into a mocking whisper that echoed back, never again, never again. Panic clawed at my mind, a relentless beast gnashing its teeth, urging me to flee this horrific prison. But where? The walls seemed to shift around me, pulsating and alive, constricting like a vice. Every corner looked the same, each path I took leading deeper into an echoing labyrinth. Face the truth, or be consumed, a voice taunted, laden with malice. The laughter from the shadows returned, mocking my desperation. Why do you seek her? Don't you recall? Memories began to flood in unbidden, dark and twisted, surfacing from the depths I wished to keep concealed. She was safe, she had to be. But the culprits of our past, the forces that had driven us apart in the first place, came wailing back to the forefront, painting the walls with scenes of anguish and regret. The echo of my parents' arguments, the fractured mirrors of the past where love turned to disdain, and then to abandonment, all came crashing down around me. I was too late once again, consumed by my own failure. Unraveled by the dual forces of longing for Alina and the bitter memories of our familial ruin. The figure re-emerged from the shadows, more defined this time, but twisted, distorted. Her face morphed into what should have been Alina's, but her eyes glimmered with unshed tears, each shimmering droplet darkening the air around us. What have you done? She lamented, and the words were not hers, but an amalgamation of voices, layers of those who had been trapped in this wretched chamber before. In a surge of horror, I realized, she was a reflection of my choices, an echo of my guardianship failed. Above her head, tendrils of darkness reached out like grasping fingers, threatening to pull her back into the void she had come from. Alina, I can save you. I cried, reaching out with both hands, desperate to grasp her and pull her into the light. Can you? The laughter rang out once more, this time sharp and discordant. What price will you pay for her? For the truth you desire. My heart raced as the chamber constricted, reality bending with every breath I took. Layers of memories cascaded around me, forming a visceral tapestry of my neglect, and at its center was Alina, trapped within the web of my making. I took a step forward, willing to plunge into whatever darkness lay before me to save her. I'll do anything. I shouted, the weight of remorse and love merging into a singular force pushing me onward. In that very moment, the shadows grew thicker, swirling like a storm, and I could feel their icy fingers reach for me. Anything. The voice taunted, each word wrapped in venomous delight. Let us see. The ground beneath me rippled and twisted, transforming into a maw of darkness that opened wide, threatening to devour me whole. But I was undeterred, still chasing the flicker of hope that was Alina. I lunged forward, propelled by despair, just as the last remnants of the light flickered. Find the key, the voice whispered with cruel clarity. Unlock her from within. But before I could register the implication, I felt the ground give way, and I was plummeting into an abyss of night. I closed my eyes tight, bracing for impact, but instead of hitting the bottom, I landed softly, surrounded by a profound silence, a silence heavy with impending doom. And then, I heard it. A faint, mournful sound, a spectral echo of a little girl's laughter, shimmering with innocence and joy, yet undercut with sorrow. I'm here, Big Brother. Alina's voice danced around me, both near and far, pulling at the strings of my heart. Where? I called, pained and full of longing, feeling the immense pressure of the shadowy void begin to close in around me. I can't see you. But there was no answer, just the haunting sound of her laughter, splintering into sobs that reverberated through my very bones. Find me, I need you. As darkness enveloped me once more, suffocating and primal, the last echoes of her voice faded into a chilling silence, replaced only by the sound of my heart, desperately thumping against the weight of my failures. And in that suffocating dark, as I felt the last tether of hope slip away, the shadows began to form a figure behind me, a chilling presence all too familiar and terrifying. Do you want to see her again? It whispered, slithering closer. Then you must pay dearly. Just then, realization struck me like a blade, and I turned swiftly, horrified by what I might reveal. The grin creeping onto its face told me I would know no peace until I faced what lurked in the depths of this nightmare. The shadow grew larger, more menacing, reaching for me with outstretched arms, and I knew, in that instant, I had already agreed to the price. I just didn't know if I was ready to confront it. The figure loomed ever closer, cloaked in an inky shroud that wrapped around it like a living entity. A pulse of fear thudded through me, but a darker urgency propelled me to remain still. What do you want? I croaked, my voice cracking under the weight of impending dread. The figure tilted its head, the emptiness of its eyes glistening with malice. I want what you want, brother, it hissed, the word dripping with venomous sweetness. Reunification. But to open that door, to pierce the veil you have formed, your penance must be paid in blood. A shiver crept down my spine, the implication pulling at the edges of my sanity. Energy thrummed in the air, a palpable tension that felt like the taut string of a bow, ready to snap at any moment. No, I won't. I felt my courage reforming as a blunt edge against the terror, yet it wavered as more whispers filled the space, echoing with fears buried too deep to recall. Why fight it? Another voice chimed in, slithering around me like smoke. You know what you are capable of. You were always the shadow to her light. The air thickened as memories came crashing back, images of Alina laughing and darting away from me like sunlight, only to be snuffed out by the tempest of our family's darkness. Stop! I screamed, clutching my head, wishing I could silence the haunting tones of history echoing in the chamber. But the shadows had their way, and with each scream for them to flee, they only thickened, feeding on my desperation. Face the truth, the growing multitude hissed in sync. It's what you've always feared most, isn't it? That you're the reason she is lost? I could feel my resolve crumbling, cracking under the weight of centuries' worth of pain and guilt. The ground beneath me vibrated with a sinister pulse, and I felt the edges of my consciousness blur as more figures joined the thrumming, their faces shrouded but voices familiar. They circled me like vultures, waiting for the moment I would break. And then, in the midst of the chaos, one voice broke through, soft, pleading, echoing with a sliver of warmth. Big brother, please. Several figures pushed forward, their silhouettes dark but held a semblance of her, sweet and innocent, yet tinged with a sinister echo that mirrored my nightmares. Alina, I reached out, heart racing. The tendrils of shadows swirled around my arm, but I resisted. I'm here. Can you save her? The dark voice mocked, coiling around my desperation. Or will you only bring more sorrow? And as I gazed into the visage of sorrow, through the roiling darkness I caught a flicker of determination in those dim eyes. I'll find you, I promise. The promise escaped my lips before I could fully grasp the ramifications, but it left a bitter taste in my mouth. In an instant, the tendrils tightened, squeezing with a force that stole my breath. Very well, the figure purred, its grin widening, revealing razor-sharp teeth. The key you seek resides within you, but know this, to unlock it, you must unearth the darkness buried in your soul. And as I registered the weight of its words, rivers of shadows erupted around me, forming yet another swirling vortex, pulling me toward its maw. The air turned frigid, igniting primal instincts to flee, yet a magnetic pull urged me toward the heart of my nightmare, my own memories. You think you can escape? The figure's voice dripped with dark glimmering scorn. True horror lies not in the depths of this chamber, but in the depths of your heart. The ground shifted violently beneath my feet, propelling me through the door of memories, where I saw flashes of my regret, a car crash, Alina's scream echoing in the wind, and every moment I had failed to protect her. Each fragment pierced my heart like a dagger twisted in relentless agony. Relive it, the myriad voices whispered, a chorus to my suffering. Feel it once more. Terror uncoiled within me, and with it came a flood of images more vivid than I had ever endured. Agonizing moments played out like a grotesque theater. The first time I lost her in that park, her tiny figure disappearing around the corner, my frantic heart racing with embarrassment and guilt. The moment when she cried, begging to be held while I turned my back to her, too saturated in teenage disdain to care about her fears. And finally, that night, that dark, fateful night that I stumbled backward, rage and despair intertwining, feeling the icy tendrils close around my throat, choking me with each gasping sob. No. I didn't mean it. I never wanted this to happen. Laughter echoed from the walls, taunting, serrated, as the scene within my mind replayed with agonizing clarity. Then find the key, the shadow urged, its voice pulsing with a sinister rhythm. Face what you have hidden away, brother, or you will remain here forever, chained by your own savoring silence. The shadows melded into a whirlpool, lifting me further into a bleak landscape of memories, the anguish spiraling at unprecedented speeds. The sound of my heartbeat thudded in my ears, a reminder of the urgency ticking away the seconds I had left, and as I steadied myself against the onslaught, a decision ignited within me, startling and unyielding. I will not let you take her. I roared, turning towards the malevolent abyss, resolve coloring my words with fire. Yet, just as strength flooded my limbs, the darkness exploded around me, enveloping me in blinding chaos. The chilling laughter reverberated from all directions as I felt the last quakes of my resolve trembling, ready to fracture and splinter, and then, a flash, blinding and pure, split the tumultuous darkness. My breath caught. For a brief second, I thought I saw Alina's face, vibrant and filled with life, reflected in the shattered fragments of my memory. Find me. She called out with an anguished, ghostly echo that sliced through the chaos. But as her light flickered, dissipating like mist in the cool evening air, shadows surged forth again, this time more insatiable, more violent. They clawed at me, fingers of despair dragging me back into the depths of horror, pulling me away from the last ember of hope, and just as the light flickered for the final time, and the shadows threatened to erase my existence, I felt the glimmer of ice-cold steel pressed against my palm. What is this? The thought ricocheted through me, as comprehension crashed like a wave, the key, the thing I needed to unlock my past. But at what cost? As the darkness surged, tendrils forming ravenous blades, I realized that to wield this key, I would need to confront the very thing I had long avoided, the monster I had become. Fear seized my heart, a grip that refused to relent. But then, amid the chaos, a chilling whisper broke the air like glass. You must decide, brother. And just as the shadows huddled closer, eager for my choice, I felt a jarring shift in the darkness while the sound of a door creaked open in my very soul. But I had no time to ponder the implications as terror blasted forth, rattling my spirit. A ghostly wail echoed through the void, and with horror creeping into my veins, I turned to see a shadowy arm extending toward me, a horrific smirk stretching across its face. Choose, or be forever consumed. The weight of my decision fell heavy on me as the ancient darkness pulsed, and I faced the reality that sometimes, the past doesn't want to be revealed. Sometimes, it prefers to devour you whole instead. A jarring chill filled the air as the shadow lurched closer, its smirk widening, showing rows of serrated teeth that gleamed under the waning remnants of light. My heart raced in sync with the footsteps echoing around me, each step reverberating like thunder rolling through a bottomless abyss. Now, choose wisely, it taunted, its voice coiling around me like smog. The inky darkness pulsed, and I could almost feel it breath alive, as if it were a heartbeat in itself. The shadow knew my fears, it thrived on them. My hand clenched tightly around the steel object that had suddenly materialized in my grasp, its chill seeping into my flesh. But this was no weapon. I hesitated, dread pooling in my stomach. I knew the implications of that key, the grim truth hidden behind its cold surface. To use it, To uncover what lay buried beneath my guilt, meant delving into memories I had sealed away with care, memories I had tried desperately to forget. Do you intend to remain a coward? The shadow hissed, its voice a sickly whisper that seeped into my very being. Let the truth take flight. Or perhaps you want to stay forever lost in the misery of your own making. I squirmed, feeling the weight of that scorn pressing down, an unbearable force nudging me closer to the edge of the precipice. Though every fiber in my being screamed against it, the truth beckoned me, its siren call enticing even as it threatened to plunge me deeper into despair. Remember her laughter, the shadow crooned, the warmth of her embrace. Wasn't he it worth fighting for? The spectre's words wove through the fabric of my mind, drawing forth memories of a time before the darkness back into the sunlight when everything had felt whole, that I could see Alina's face flickering, a distorted reflection caught in the depths of the shadows. Her laughter echoed, rising above the tide of despair, but soon morphed into screams. Big brother, please. Save me. Select your fate. The shadow roared, rising in pitch. You're both the solution and the problem. With every heartbeat, I felt the dread deepening, a rift between what I desired to know and what I feared to uncover. The choice loomed ahead like an abyss, yawning wide, ready to swallow me whole. Every memory surged in unison, every failure, every stab of regret forming a grisly mosaic of guilt strewn out before me. I took a step back as the memories crashed into me again, relentless, a montage of tarnished ideals, betrayal, and terror. Each remembrance sending shock waves through my resolve, warping my understanding of self. The agony glistening with dark allure was seductive, pulling me off balance, urging me forward toward the key's edge. Embrace the darkness, the figure whispered, extending a hand that shimmered in the dimness like starlight. You are not alone. What you truly fear is your own power. Unleash it, and it will set you free. I gritted my teeth, staring into the abyss of twisted shadows that beckoned like an insatiable maw. I wrestled to reclaim control, an internal battle raging, but each thought was swiftly seized by the howling specters swirling like a tempest around me. Instead of revolt, my body colluded with the darkness, succumbing to the excess of despair. I heralded my own defeat, tightening my grip on the key, the answer to all my doubts, and I heard Alina, her voice breaking through the chaos once more, Big brother, please don't let them win. Desperation flooded my heart, igniting a spark of defiance. I thrust the steel object forward to the shadows. The collision of light and dark erupted like thunder, a vibrant clash that illuminated my surroundings in searing white, a rapture within the relentless gloom. The shadow screamed, a shrill cacophony that sliced through the air like tempered glass, reverberating against the walls of this haunted oasis. I looked up, and for the briefest moment, I glimpsed clarity, a reflection of Alina's face anchoring me in the storm, but just as quickly as illumination had come, it was shattered by the shadows surging back, hungry and ravenous for my fear. The key shattered in my hand, revealing a pulsating heart of darkness within it, a beating reminder of my transgressions, and suddenly, I was once again engulfed in the chaos of my memories. Wails echoed, a legion of voices frantic and clawing at me, each a reflection of my past sins. You really think you can undo your choices? They screeched, filling the air with mournful shrieks. Before I could muster a retort or reclaim my strength, the darkness materialized into figures I recognized as my own. Each visage mirrored my anguish, bared their twisted expressions of torment, guilt, and unforgiving judgment. They advanced, ravenous, yearning to drag me back toward the depths, to punish me for the slights of my neglected existence. Become what you were meant to be. They shrieked as they coiled around me, drowning me beneath a wave of despair. The force cascaded like a torrent, suffocating, cruel, and I felt each inch of my being extinguished beneath it all. Overwhelmed, I stumbled, gasping for precious air. But as darkness threatened to eclipse me entirely, a surge sparked through me, a flicker of defiance ignited by Alina's voice, caged in my heart. No. I want to be your plaything. I screamed, shaking off the wailing figures, scrambling for an escape. Clarity seized my vision amidst the chaos, and the key's fiery presence ignited anew deep within. But as the shadows hesitated, reeling back momentarily, a whirlwind of blackened tendrils surged forward once more, engulfing everything in their wake. The last shred of clarity spun away, a whisper trailing behind like a dying breath. Choose, brother. Will you confront your fears or be consumed by them? And just as the shadows started to swallow me whole, an electrifying pain seared through me. I felt something piercing, tearing at the fabric of my very soul. I was not just deciding my fate, I was setting the stage for the ultimate reckoning. As my vision blurred and the tendrils constricted tighter, pulling me back toward oblivion, a chilling realization crashed through me like a breaking wave. The shadow now wore a familiar face, twisted and forlorn, Alina's final expression of betrayal, twisted in anguish. Choose. The resonating echo thundered one last time, and I was left to ponder, in this dance of darkness, what remained to fight for. The final shadow raced toward me, and I braced myself for the inevitable, a storm brewing within as I plummeted further into despair. I had to face the unspeakable, or risk losing everything all over again. Then, beneath the cacophony of despair, I heard the whispers probing deeper, sowing seeds of doubt and fear, drawing closer. And in that very moment, as chaos erupted around me, a single thought pierced through: what if in trying to save her, I was the one destined to cast the final darkness over her memory? And with that thought, I awoke to the bone-chilling truth: the end was only beginning, and I had traded one nightmare for another. The air trembled with an electric ache when I opened my eyes and stood once more in the familiar darkness, but this time it felt different. I was no longer trapped in the chaos of my memories, nor was I ensnared in the depths of fear. Instead, I stood poised at the precipice of something unspeakably primal, something that twisted the very fabric of my reality, an unwritten curse laced into the veins of my home. That I gasped, heart racing, as everything flooded back to me with unrelenting clarity, the truth of my past and the shadow that had danced around it. It was here, in this very house, where dreams once flourished and laughter echoed before desolation invaded, and I watched helplessly as Alina slipped into the shadows. It was my inability to save her that had long ago birthed this creeping malevolence, this insatiable darkness that had intertwined with our existence. Open your eyes, a voice hissed, chilling yet hauntingly familiar. As if the house itself had come to life. Shadows undulated around me, and I knew instinctively I needed to confront the specter of my own creation, the tangible echo of my neglect engulfing the walls. My knees buckled under the weight of realization, old scars throbbed anew, and guilt twisted within me like a blade. I had tried to deny it, to escape the truth I feared would shatter me, but here I stood at its gateway, the moment of reckoning. Alina! I called, desperation clawing at my throat. Please, I need you. I stumbled forward, pulled by a tether of agony, knowing the truth was steeped in blood and sorrow. As I stepped deeper into the shadows, glimpses of a figure flickered, my sister, a hazy silhouette, caught between existence and the abyss. The echo of her voice brushed against my soul, pleading and sweet yet laced with unbearable grief. Big brother, please. Don't leave me. I shouted, lungs burning, as a chill swept through the corridor, velvety and oppressive. The air crackled, and I felt the weight of countless eyes upon me, watching my every move, fed by the fear that bled from my heart. The laughter grew, rising like smoke, twisting into shapes. It fueled my resolve. It was no longer just about saving Alina, but confronting the reality of the darkness I had unknowingly fostered. The shadows wove together, morphing into a visage of despair, both grotesque and captivating. It was less an entity and more a reflection of my soul, my regrets, twisted into their very own horror. Remember, the shadow rasped, its voice a grinding echo of my fears. You summoned me. You've become the darkness you feared. No. I roared, pushing against the suffocating tide. I will not become that. The air thickened as flashes of memories dissected my dignity, a car crash looming like a specter, Alina screaming, my heart sinking into a well of guilt. The laughter of shadows morphed into tangible faces of those I had failed, haunting me with their eternal hurt. Make us whole again, it's your penance, they murmured, their pleas melding into something indescribably sinister, weaving an insatiable need within me to untangle the truth. Yet with every heartbeat, the shadows laughed louder, desperation engulfed me. I had to confront my fears, not just of losing her but of what I had hidden inside, the unspoken truths of betrayal and fear that had long resurrected in this cursed place. So I walked forward. "Face your choices," the shadows roared. With my trembling hands, I reached out to the dark figure, and as I did, the house shuddered, snapping the fragile thread of reality. I saw Alina, the tenderness of her smile glimmering, caught forever between the realms of innocence and the horror of my failure. "Help me find you," I screamed, and in that moment, everything fell silent, a calm amidst the storm. The void thickened as if the house was holding its breath, the shadows shifting into a swirling void, rising to claim me. But then, an unexpected warmth enveloped me, suffusing the air, a flicker of hope ignited against the darkness. I recognized the form behind the shadows now, the silhouette of my sister unfurling from the murky depths, a beacon piercing through the despair that I staggered back, heart racing. In her sheer determination, I realized she was haunting me, crying out from a place stronger than my regrets. "Big brother, don't let them take you. You have to remember." In an instant, everything clicked into place, the true horror of my actions and the intoxicating truth behind Alina's whispers. "You've imprisoned me." I gasped, horror dawning on me. I became the keeper of our shared nightmare, shackling her in this dark limbo. "You were never lost, I failed you." Her presence twisted, flicked momentarily, and then she was there, standing before me, unspeakably fragile yet impossibly fierce. "The key is within, brother." Alina's voice echoed as shadows receded. "Face your darkness to save me." With the realization that the power to unlock the chaos lay within my own guilt and sorrow, I turned toward the embracing shadows, ready to confront the mirror of my own creation. The air crackled with energy, resonating with the tumult of emotions I had long buried. "You're not my darkness, you're my truth." The shadows recoiled, howling with rage as I plunged into the depths, allowing the pain to wash over me until it swallowed everything. That I was no longer just a prisoner, I was the keeper of our fate. And in that moment, the walls shuddered, and the shadows receded as a blinding light enveloped me, bursting forth from the very fabric of my memories, every moment, every regret fueling a surge of clarity, breaking myself free from the inevitability of despair. Then, as if caught in a time loop, I felt lost once more, but not in the void of shadows. This time, I faced the lingering silhouettes of those I had failed, and the moment felt familiar. Only, this time, my heart resonated with a glimmer of hope. Hope that echoed through the ether, and then I saw her. Alina. It was a breath, a prayer, as her figure shimmered in the light, the darkness dissipating, revealing the path we could reclaim. But just as quickly, the shadows screeched, writhing around me, clawing for what remained. "You cannot escape, not ever." And in that very moment, I felt the weight of my own destiny fold within the gloom, realizing that the horror didn't lie solely in the shadows or the regrets, but within my refusal to accept the duality of light and dark that exists in us all. "Alina," I murmured through the chaos, intuition signaling danger. "This is not the end." And in that last instant, as the shadows lunged and trapped me once more, my voice soared, fueled by an undying resolve. "I choose to remember, and I'll keep fighting. I won't stop until you're free." The laughter waned, the shadows trembled. Suddenly, I felt a jolt, and all fell quiet. The heavy breath of the house echoed with finality, a stitching together of darkness and light, and then I was plunged into an overwhelming silence. The truth had finally emerged, but as I stood there, suspended in darkness, the echoes of the past whispered. Something lingered, an unsettling reminder. The shadows may have receded in this moment, but I could sense them waiting, watching, understanding that not everything was resolved, that the darkness would forever linger. And then, from the cold abyss of silence, came the faintest murmur, a whisper taunting me like a bitter aftertaste. "Choose wisely next time, brother, for I am still here." And I knew, without a shred of doubt, that as long as I lived, the darkness would never truly be gone. It had merely retreated into the recesses of my soul, watching, waiting for its moment to seize me once more, just as it had done before.